If one day, the person you trust the most inside your own home becomes the one who betrays you, what would you do? My name is Margaret, 65 years old, living in a small, quiet town in Texas. All my life, I believed that kindness and forgiveness could keep a home peaceful. But that night, one single phone call shattered everything I thought I knew. Our town is so small that everyone knows each other's names. If a car you don't recognize stops outside, the neighbors will ask, "Got company today?" Margaret, I live in an old wooden house where laughter used to echo when my husband was still alive. He passed away more than a decade ago, leaving behind only me, my son Daniel, and my daughter-in-law, Lisa. Daniel is a civil engineer. His job often takes him far away sometimes, for weeks. On those days, it's just me and Lisa. She's young, bright, caring, the kind of daughter-in-law every mother dreams of. Every morning, she brewed coffee, I made breakfast. In the evenings, we'd watch the news together and talk about little things: flowers, family, the weather. I used to tell her, "You're a gift from God. He sent you so I wouldn't grow old alone." She would smile, wrap her arm around my shoulders, and her eyes would soften like sunlight through our kitchen window. I truly believed I had gained another daughter. But that smile, the one I thought was full of warmth, turned into a haunting echo the night my phone rang. It was a calm evening. I sat by the window, stirring a cup of mint tea when the phone rang. On the line was my neighbor, Edith, her voice trembling. "Margaret, I don't know if I should say this, but I just saw Lisa. She was walking with a man I've never seen before. They were holding hands, very close. The moment those words left her lips, my heart stopped. My hands trembled. The cup slipped from my grasp. Hot tea spilled across the floor. The room that once felt warm suddenly turned cold. I stood there in silence, unable to move, unable to breathe. My eyes drifted toward the wedding photo hanging above the fireplace. I walked closer, each step heavier than the last. I reached out, fingertips shaking as they brushed across the smiling faces in the frame: Daniel in his black suit, Lisa in her white gown, both glowing with love and promises. Before God, they vowed to cherish each other. And now, my voice cracked into a whisper. No, not Lisa. She wouldn't. Outside, the wind picked up. The wind chime by the porch clattered softly like fragments of memory breaking apart. I sat down in the rocking chair, his old chair, the one my husband used to read his newspaper in every night. My eyes wandered to the backyard, where Lisa and I had planted yellow daisies last spring. She once told me flowers bloom when love is honest. Now all I could see was doubt growing where those flowers once stood. Maybe Edith saw wrong. Maybe it was just a friend. Maybe I was overthinking. But my heart wouldn't quiet down. I brewed another cup of tea and sat by the old oak table, staring at the flickering candle in front of my husband's photograph. The flame danced across his kind face, and I whispered, "If you were still here, what would you do? Should I tell Daniel? It will break him. But if I stay silent, he'll live inside a lie." Tears welled in my eyes, falling onto the wood below. The clock ticked slowly, tick-tock, tick-tock, each sound heavier than the last. And somewhere between those seconds, I realized peace had already left this home. That night, I learned something I had never wanted to know. Sometimes a whisper can destroy a lifetime of trust. And even if truth cuts deep, it's still the only light strong enough to guide you out of the dark. Because if you don't face it, pain will take root in silence, and silence can become guilt. Sometimes, all it takes is one rumor to make a mother's world collapse. Have you ever felt it, the moment when your heart insists on a truth your mind refuses to believe? If you believe that truth, no matter how painful, is still worth knowing, comment yes. And follow Family Revenge Stories, where every tear leads to justice. The next morning, the sun rose pale and uncertain, like even the heavens hesitated to shine on the truth I was about to face. I woke earlier than usual, though I hadn't truly slept. My pillow was still damp. The room still smelled of mint tea and unanswered questions. Lisa's laughter floated down the hallway, gentle and bright. The same laughter that once filled me with warmth. But today, it pierced like glass. She was humming a tune while brushing her hair, as if the world were kind, as if her heart were innocent. I tightened the shawl around my shoulders and said softly, "I'll be going to the market, dear. Do you need anything?" She turned, smiling easily. "Oh, no, Mom. I'm heading out too, meeting a friend." A friend. The word clung to my skin like a thorn. I nodded, my voice calm. "Be careful, sweetheart." And just like that, two women stepped into the same morning, one to buy groceries, one to bury a lie. I walked slowly down the street, my old leather bag hanging by my side. My heart pounded with each step. I wasn't used to suspicion. It felt heavy, unnatural. But something inside me whispered, "You need to see it yourself, Margaret. You need to know." So I followed, not too close, not too far, just enough to watch her reflection shimmer in shop windows, her hair glinting under the sun. She turned down a familiar street, not toward the library or the flower shop, but toward a small cafe at the corner. The cafe was quiet, tucked behind rows of oak trees. Through the glass, I saw her Lisa. She wasn't alone. A man sat across from her. Young, sharp-dressed, confident. The kind of man who looked at a woman like she was his secret. Lisa leaned forward, her hand brushing his. They laughed, not politely, not by accident, but like two people who had shared too many mornings together. Her eyes softened, her lips curved in a way I had never seen when she smiled at Daniel. And in that moment, my heart broke. Not loud, not sudden, but like paper, tearing quietly in the dark. I reached into my bag, my fingers trembling as I pulled out my phone. The screen blinked to life, cold, bright, unforgiving. I lifted it, snapped a photo, proof, truth, pain, all captured in a single frame. But as I stared at the image, tears blurred my vision. I couldn't breathe. I pressed delete, because seeing it once was enough. I didn't need evidence. I already carried the wound inside me. I walked home with shaking legs. The world around me was the same. Birds still sang. Wind still rustled the trees. But inside, everything had shifted. At the market, I picked up apples, though I didn't remember choosing them. My mind replayed every moment, every word Lisa had spoken in this house. Every smile, every embrace, every "Mom, you rest. I'll take care of it." Had it all been a lie? Or had love simply faded while I wasn't looking? When I reached home, the walls seemed colder. The kitchen smelled of yesterday's tea. I set the groceries down, but they rolled off the counter, red apples scattering across the floor. I didn't pick them up. Instead, I went to the living room where the framed photo of my husband rested above the fireplace. His kind eyes seemed to follow me, as if asking what burden I was carrying. I sat down, folded my hands in my lap, and whispered, "I saw her. You were right. The truth always finds its way home." Tears gathered again, but I didn't wipe them. They traced the lines of age on my cheeks, carving paths of sorrow I could no longer hide. "What should I do?" I asked the silence. "If I tell Daniel, his heart will shatter. He loves her more than himself. But if I say nothing, he'll live inside a lie. He'll keep building a life on sand, never knowing the ground is gone beneath his feet." The clock ticked slow and heavy, echoing through the room. Somewhere outside, a car door closed. A dog barked. The world moved on, but I sat still, caught between truth and mercy. When you're a mother, pain isn't simple. It's layered. It's never just your own. I could survive betrayal. But could my son survive knowing the woman he adored had betrayed him? I closed my eyes, breathing slowly. In the darkness behind my lids, I saw Daniel as a boy, running down the hallway with scraped knees, holding a crumpled drawing, shouting, "Look, Mom, I made this for you." That little boy, he's still there somewhere beneath the man he's become. And that boy still believes his mother can make the world right again. I opened my eyes, and for the first time, I realized sometimes being strong doesn't mean fighting. Sometimes it means waiting, letting truth arrive when hearts are ready to face it. That evening, I decided to speak. Not as a judge, not as a victim, but as a mother who still believed in redemption. I set the kettle on the stove, letting the gentle hum of boiling water fill the silence. The scent of chamomile drifted through the kitchen, sweet forgiving, like the conversation I prayed we would have. When Lisa arrived, she looked surprised. "Mom, you wanted to see me." I smiled faintly. "Yes, dear. Sit down. I made tea. Your favorite." She hesitated for a second, then nodded and took a seat across from me. I poured the tea slowly, watching the steam rise between us like a thin veil hiding all the things we hadn't said. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice was steady. "Lisa," I began softly. "I know." Her eyes flickered confusion and fear flashing for just a second before she caught herself. "Know what, Mom?" I looked down at the teacup, then back at her. "I know about the man. I saw you at the cafe." The words came out quieter than I expected, almost like a prayer. For a moment, silence filled the room. No ticking clock, no wind, no breath, just the weight of truth between us. She froze her eyes, wide lips parting, as if to defend herself, then stopping, realizing lies would only make it worse. Slowly, tears welled in her eyes. She reached across the table, grabbing my hands. "Mom, I made a mistake. I don't know what came over me." Her voice cracked. "Daniel's been away so much, and I've been lonely. I swear it didn't mean anything." Her tears fell fast, landing on my skin, warm, trembling, human. My heart clenched. In those tears, I wanted to believe there was regret. I wanted to believe she could turn back. I cupped her hands, gently whispering, "Lisa, listen to me. Stop this. Daniel loves you with all his heart. You're his world. Don't destroy that. Don't destroy yourself." She sobbed harder, leaning in, pressing her forehead against my hand. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I promise. It's over. I'll fix everything." And in that moment, something inside me softened. I saw not a deceiver, but a lost girl trying to find her way back. I placed a hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "We all stumble, child. What matters is that you stand again the right way." She nodded, eyes red, voice small. "Thank you, Mom. I don't deserve your kindness." "Maybe not," I replied gently, "but that's what family is for." For the first time in days, I breathed deeply. The tension in my chest eased. Perhaps love could heal what betrayal had broken. Perhaps forgiveness could still save our home. When she left, she hugged me tightly, whispering, "You won't regret this." And I truly thought I wouldn't. That night, I tidied the kitchen, humming softly, my heart a little lighter. I poured out the cold tea, turned off the lights, and went upstairs. But as I passed by Lisa's room, I noticed the door slightly open, a faint glow from her phone screen cutting through the dark. I didn't mean to listen. Truly, I didn't. But her voice carried sharp mocking, slicing through the quiet like a blade. Yeah, she believed it. The old woman actually bought every word. "I told you she's soft. It's easy." A pause. Then a laugh, cold, triumphant. "Don't worry, baby. She won't bother us again." The air left my lungs. My hand gripping the banister trembled. My knees nearly gave out. I pressed myself against the wall, covering my mouth, afraid a single breath would betray me. Her voice continued carefree, cruel, as if she hadn't just crushed the last fragment of trust I had. In that moment, the room around me blurred. The photographs on the hallway wall, Daniel's graduation, their wedding day, my husband's smiling face, all seemed to fade into shadows. My hand curled into a fist. Not out of anger, out of heartbreak, out of awakening. I stepped back quietly, each movement slow, careful, silent. When I reached my room, I closed the door and stood there staring at the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who had poured tea and spoken softly about love and forgiveness. Her eyes were different, colder, clearer, sharper. That night, I didn't cry. I simply sat beside my husband's photo, whispering. She fooled me once, but never again. The house was quiet, but in that silence, something shifted. Kindness no longer felt safe. Trust no longer felt holy. From that moment, I knew love without truth isn't love. It's a chain, and I had just broken mine. The next day, I asked Lisa to meet me again. There was still a small part of me, fragile, foolish perhaps, that believed in second chances. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, soft and golden, but inside my chest felt heavy. I had spent the night thinking about every word she'd said on the phone, every cruel laugh, and yet the mother in me still whispered, "Try once more." Sometimes people only change when someone believes they still can. She arrived just after noon, her heels clicking across the tiled floor, confidence radiating from every step. No guilt, no hesitation, only the same smile she wore when she thought the world belonged to her. I gestured toward the table. "Sit down, dear. We need to talk." She sighed, glancing at her watch. "Make it quick, Mom. I'm meeting a friend later." "A friend." The word echoed again, sharp and familiar. I swallowed the ache in my throat and spoke softly. "Lisa, please. I'm not here to judge. I just want you to stop. End it before it destroys everything." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" I looked at her. Not the lies, not the charm, but the woman beneath them, and said gently, "I heard you. Last night. I know the truth." She froze, just for a heartbeat. Then, like a mask slipping back into place, her lips curved into a smirk. "You were listening. I didn't mean to. But God wanted me to hear it. He wanted me to know what I was protecting." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "And what exactly are you planning to do about it?" "Nothing," I said, quickly shaking my head. "Nothing, Lisa. I'm not here to expose you. I'm not here to ruin your life. I don't want Daniel to suffer. He loves you too much. If he finds out, it will break him." Her voice was cool, dismissive. "That's his problem." The words landed like stones. I blinked, unable to believe what I'd heard. "You don't mean that." She shrugged. "You think I owe him something? You think I owe you something? Don't pretend you know what I need. You're old, Margaret. Times have changed. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't fix loneliness." Her tone cut deep, sharp, bitter, filled with the kind of arrogance only youth wears so easily. "Lisa," I said softly, "I've lived long enough to know what happens when you trade love for comfort. It never ends well." She rolled her eyes, standing up. "I don't need a lecture. You had your life. Let me live mine. Please," I begged, my voice trembling. "Don't let Daniel find out. He's not strong enough for this. If you still care for him, even a little walk away before it's too late." She turned sharply, her eyes cold, almost amused. "I don't need you telling me what to do. Stay out of my marriage, Margaret, or you'll regret it." For a moment, the air between us felt frozen. The woman I once called daughter stood before me like a stranger. There was no warmth, no remorse, no trace of the girl I thought I knew. Only pride, only cruelty. My hands trembled as I whispered, "Lisa, you're pushing yourself off a cliff. You may not see it now, but one day you'll look back and wish someone had stopped you." She scoffed. "Then stop me. Go ahead. Tell him. See what happens." I stood there silent. Because she was right. If I told Daniel now, he would break, and I would lose him. He would blame me for destroying the illusion he still needed to survive. So I said nothing. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and smiled faintly. "I have to go. You can keep your advice, Mom. It's outdated." She grabbed her purse, turned her back, and walked away. Her perfume lingered long after the door shut, sweet but suffocating, like the memory of trust now gone sour. When the house fell silent again, I sat down in the chair she'd just left. The tea had gone cold. My hands rested on my lap, palms open, empty. I stared at the table, the faint scratches from years of family dinners, birthdays, laughter. All of it felt like a lifetime ago. I thought about the woman she used to be, or maybe the woman I imagined she was. The one who hugged me in the kitchen, who called me Mom, who said thank you for every small kindness. But that woman didn't exist. Perhaps she never had. The truth hit me quietly, like dusk settling after sunset. I couldn't save her. Some people don't need guidance, they need consequences. And though my heart still beat for my son, it grew colder toward the woman who stood beside him. I walked to the window and watched her car pull away. My reflection stared back from the glass eyes, red lips trembling, spirit weary. I whispered to the wind, I tried John. I really did. But you can't fix what refuses to bend. And as her car disappeared down the road, so did the last bit of hope I had left for her. What remained was resolve quiet, patient, unyielding. For Daniel's sake, for the truth's sake. Because love without honesty isn't love. It's poison, served in a golden cup. And I was done drinking it. The morning I decided to visit Lisa, the sky was heavy with clouds, gray and still. It felt like even the heavens knew something fragile was about to break. I woke early, packed a small basket with her favorite dishes, chicken stew, warm bread, a few slices of apple pie. Old habits die hard. Even when your heart is bruised, love doesn't vanish overnight. It fades slowly like the last ember before the dark. I walked the familiar road to her house. Each step echoed with memories, laughter in the kitchen, Sunday dinners, Daniel's voice calling Mom, come taste this. I told myself I wasn't going to fight, wasn't going to plead. I only wanted to remind her redemption was still within reach if she wanted it. When I reached the porch, I knocked softly. The door was unlocked. Lisa, I called, stepping inside. No answer, only the faint hum of a phone. I followed the sound, my steps quiet, careful. In the living room, she stood near the window, phone in hand, laughing that same laugh I once thought was joy. But it wasn't Daniel on the screen. It was him, the man from the cafe. Their eyes sparkled, their smiles secret. A world built on lies, right there in my son's home. My chest tightened. The basket slipped slightly in my hand. I took a deep breath and whispered, Lisa, please, stop this. Don't do this to Daniel. He doesn't deserve it. She turned sharply, startled, then annoyed. What are you doing here? I brought food, I said softly, and I came to talk. Her tone sharpened. You followed me again. No, I replied, shaking my head. I only came because I care. You're walking down a path that will destroy you and him. Please end it before it's too late. She sighed, rolling her eyes. Not this again. I took a step closer, voice trembling. Lisa, listen to me. Love built on lies can't survive. You'll lose everything, your home, your family, your soul. Something in her face hardened. Enough, she shouted. You think you can control me? You think you can tell me how to live? You're not my mother. I froze. The words cut deep, deeper than I expected. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, she stepped forward, eyes blazing, jaw tight. Stay out of my life. Then it happened. A push, sharp, angry, sudden. My back hit the table. Pain shot through my arm. I tried to steady myself, but she shoved again. Lisa! I gasped. Her hand flew faster than thought. The slap cracked across my face. I stumbled, the world spinning. My head struck the corner of the table. A flash of light, then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was on the floor. My arm throbbed, bent wrong, sharp pain pulsing through every breath. The basket lay overturned, stew spilled. Bread crushed the pie, shattered into crumbs. Above me, Lisa stood frozen, panic flickering across her face. The front door burst open. A neighbor's voice rang out. What happened? Lisa spun, her voice shaking, not from guilt, but calculation. She fell. She just lost her balance. I tried to speak, but the pain was sharp, stealing my breath. I looked up at her, the woman I'd called daughter, and saw no remorse. Only fear of being caught. Only lies forming faster than tears. My neighbor knelt beside me. Margaret, don't move. We'll call an ambulance. But I didn't hear the rest. The world blurred again. Through the haze, my gaze found hers, Lisa's. And something shifted inside me. All the kindness, all the forgiveness I'd offered, it burned away, replaced by something cold, steady, alive. My eyes met hers, and for the first time, she flinched. Because she saw it too. The end of the mother she could deceive. The end of the softness she had taken for weakness. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was awake. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I watched her from the doorway. She stood there, arms crossed, mask perfectly in place, telling the story she'd rehearsed 100 times in her head. She fell. She repeated voice, trembling just enough to sound sincere. But I knew better. I had lived long enough to know when a mask starts to crack. And I swore silently to the heavens above and to the husband whose portrait hung over my bed. This would be the last time she laid a hand or a lie upon this family. That night in the hospital bed, the pain came in waves, sharp in my arm, dull in my head, but deepest of all, in my heart. Yet beneath it, something new stirred, not weakness, not sorrow. Resolve. They say every mother has a breaking point. Mine had come not with words, but with blood and bone. And as I stared at the sterile ceiling, I whispered, "Mercy ends here." Because love may forgive, but dignity remembers. That night, after the house fell silent and the painkillers had dulled the ache in my arm, I stood before the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't the same woman who once believed kindness could fix everything. My face was pale, a bruise darkening along my cheekbone, my arm bound tight in a sling. But my eyes were different. They no longer begged for peace. They searched for purpose. The clock on the nightstand ticked softly, marking the seconds between who I had been and who I was about to become. I touched the mirror gently, tracing the faint scar along my forehead. My voice was quiet, but it carried weight even in the stillness. "If kindness is trampled on," I whispered, "then silence is a sin." I had spent months hoping she would change. I prayed, forgave, waited. But now hope felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about protecting what my husband and I had built: our son, our home, our name. I walked slowly to the old desk in the corner, every movement careful, deliberate. I opened the drawer and pulled out a small leather journal, one my husband had gifted me years ago. Inside the first page still bore his handwriting: "Truth needs no armor, only light." So I began. The first thing I did was write down everything: dates, times, places. The cafe, the man, the day she pushed me. I documented it all. Then I reached for the small black recorder I used for grocery lists and began using it for something far more important. Late at night, when Lisa thought I was asleep, I would quietly record her phone calls through the thin walls, her whispered plans, her lies, the promises she made to another man. Each word became a thread, and soon I had enough to weave a tapestry of truth. Next came the photographs. I returned to the cafe once more, not as a heartbroken mother, but as a witness. I sat near the window, hidden behind my hat camera in hand, and there she was, laughing again, with him unaware that her secrets were unraveling in the daylight. When she left, I followed just far enough to see them walk into a hotel. I waited outside until they emerged. Hours later, their hands entwined smiles, careless. One picture, one truth. Over the following days, I gathered receipts, hotel bills, credit card charges, bank statements, showing money quietly withdrawn from the account Daniel worked so hard to build. Each document, each signature, another nail in the coffin of her deceit. But I wasn't reckless. I knew rage could destroy faster than betrayal. So I turned to wisdom instead. The next morning, I called Mr. Harrison, the family lawyer. He'd served our family for 20 years, loyal, discreet, and sharp as a blade. When he arrived, I poured him tea, just as I always had. But this time, the conversation wasn't about estate planning or taxes. It was about justice. "I need your help," I said simply. He glanced at my bandaged arm, then at my eyes. "You've been hurt." I nodded, more than once. "But I'm done suffering. I want to make sure Daniel never does." He listened as I laid out everything: the affair, the lies, the violence. Then I opened the folder and placed the evidence on the table: photos, audio recordings, receipts, transfers. The story of betrayal written in ink and light. He examined them one by one, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. This is more than enough." "I don't want drama," I told him. "No police, no shouting matches. I want everything done quietly, legally, permanently." He nodded. We'll transfer all assets, house savings, investments into Daniel's name. She won't see it coming. Good, I whispered. By the time the truth surfaces, she'll have nothing left to take. Together, we created a plan. Step by step, signature by signature. Every form filed, every account sealed. I wasn't stealing from her. I was reclaiming what was never hers to begin with. Once the paperwork was complete, I placed copies of every document and every piece of evidence into a sealed envelope, labeling it carefully for Daniel. I walked to the bank the next morning, the envelope tucked against my chest, and rented a safety deposit box. The clerk smiled politely as I signed my name, unaware that within that small metal drawer lay the fate of a marriage built on lies. As I closed the vault, the heavy door echoing shut behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not joy, not victory, just the calm certainty of doing what was right. When I returned home, I called Mr. Harrison once more. When my son comes back from his business trip, I said I want him to know everything, but only when I'm ready, when it's time. He understood. You have my word. That evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, my injured arm resting gently on the cushion. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with soft gold and deep crimson. And as I watched the day fade, I realized something profound. I was no longer waiting to be saved. I was preparing to deliver justice myself. For months, I had been the victim of deceit, of cruelty, of silence. But now I was no longer powerless. I wasn't driven by hatred, but by purpose, by truth, by the promise I had made at my husband's grave to protect our son, no matter the cost. As night settled, I stood once more before the mirror. The woman who stared back wasn't broken. She was steady. Her scars had become her armor, her pain, her compass. This ends with me, I said softly. And for the first time, I believed it. Daniel returned on a Sunday afternoon. The house, once so full of warmth, now felt like a stage built for a cruel performance. I had prepared his favorite meal, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the way his father used to make it, because no matter how heavy my heart was, a mother's love never forgets the small things. I wanted this homecoming to feel normal, even though nothing about our lives was normal anymore. The sound of the front door opening stirred something deep inside me. My son's footsteps echoed through the hallway, strong, confident, familiar. Mom, he called, his voice warm, unguarded. I turned, a smile breaking through the sorrow. Daniel, you're home. But before I could take another step, Lisa appeared behind him, her arm wrapped in a bandage, her eyes downcast, face pale with practiced fragility. She looked like a wounded dove, fragile and innocent, except I knew better. Daniel rushed to her side. Lisa, are you sure you're okay? She nodded weakly. I'll be fine, she whispered, stealing a glance at me. I just don't want to talk about it. I felt the blood drain from my face. The room tilted slightly. I steadied myself against the table. What happened? I asked softly, though, the answer already burned in my chest. Lisa hesitated, biting her lip just long enough to make it look real. Then she whispered, Your mother. She lost her temper. She hit me. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick, choking, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. Lisa, I said quietly, you know that isn't true. Daniel turned to me, eyes narrowing. Mom, tell me she's lying. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. What could I say? That his wife, the woman he adored, was capable of cruelty, of deceit, of violence? Would he believe me? She's making it up. I finally managed, voice trembling. I would never lay a hand on her. You know me, Daniel. You know me. But Lisa lowered her gaze, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes. I didn't want to say anything, she murmured. But she's never liked me. I tried so hard to be a good daughter-in-law, but I can't keep pretending. I'm scared, Daniel. I just want peace. Her voice cracked in all the right places. And my son, the boy I raised to be kind, to protect, to trust, looked at me as if I were a stranger. Mom, he said slowly, shaking his head. Why? Why would you do this? Daniel, I whispered. Please. I didn't. But the truth no longer mattered. Not here, not now, because love can blind even the wisest heart. And Daniel's eyes saw only what she wanted him to see. He stepped back, placing an arm protectively around Lisa. I don't know what's happening to you, but I won't let you hurt her. My chest tightened. Hurt her, I echoed. Daniel, she's the one. Enough. He snapped, his voice louder than I had ever heard. The words sliced through me like glass. Mom, please, don't make this worse. I love you, but you have to stop making things so hard for Lisa. She's my wife. You should be supporting her, not tearing her down. His words hit harder than any slap. I stood there, frozen, staring at the boy I once carried in my arms, the man I had watched grow, now defending the very person destroying him. Lisa sniffled, leaning into him, playing the part perfectly. Please, Daniel, don't fight with her. I'll just stay somewhere else until things calm down. And just like that, she had won. My hands trembled. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see. But instead, I swallowed my pain, forcing my voice to steady. Daniel, I said quietly, I've lived long enough to know truth doesn't hide forever. One day you'll see her for who she really is. He sighed, frustrated. Mom, why can't you just let us be happy? Happy. The word felt bitter on my tongue. Happiness built on lies was a house made of smoke. It would vanish with the first gust of truth. But I didn't say that. I only looked at him, my son, my heart, my mistake, for believing love alone could guide him. Tears welled in my eyes, not from anger, but from grief. The kind of grief only a mother knows, the pain of being misunderstood by the child you would die for. Lisa rested her head on his shoulder, casting me one final triumphant glance, the quiet smile of someone who believed she had silenced me for good. But she was wrong. I pressed my lips together, holding back every word that wanted to escape. I wouldn't fight her lies with anger. I would fight them with truth. Cold, clear, undeniable. As they walked away, Daniel's arm around her, I whispered to the empty room. You'll see, my son. You'll see. The house grew quiet again, but the silence no longer hurt. It steadied me, because now I understood sometimes love isn't soft. Sometimes love must stand alone, waiting for the day eyes open and hearts remember who truly stood by them. And when that day came, I would be ready. Not with rage, not with bitterness, but with the truth shining brighter than all her lies. I chose a Saturday, the same day my husband and I had married 40 years ago. A day meant for love, not war. But sometimes the only way to honor the past is to protect its legacy from being destroyed. So I decided to host a celebration, a small anniversary dinner, in memory of the vows my husband and I once made. Love, faith, truth. Words that used to mean everything. The invitations were handwritten, as they always had been. Dinner at 7, I wrote. Family only. I sent one to Daniel and one to Lisa. I even called to make sure they'd come. Lisa's voice on the phone was sweet as sugar, unaware of what awaited her. Of course, Mom, she said. We wouldn't miss it. By 6 o'clock, the house was warm with candlelight and the smell of rosemary and roast. Old photographs lined the mantel, my wedding day, Daniel as a baby, Lisa, and him on the day they said I do. Every frame, every memory, a piece of the story she had tried to rewrite. Guests began to arrive. Cousins, neighbors, old friends. They hugged me, wished me well, raised glasses of wine to love that lasts. Only I knew the truth. Sometimes love endures not through gentleness, but through courage. At 7 sharp, Daniel and Lisa walked in hand. She looked radiant, wrapped in ivory silk, her smile dazzling. I watched her move through the room, greeting relatives, laughing, playing the role she'd perfected. Daniel followed beside her, proud, trusting blind. When dinner began, the room filled with the sound of clinking glasses and easy conversation. I sat at the head of the table, my arms still wrapped in a brace, my heart steady, my mind clear. For once, I wasn't trembling. The truth was already in motion. I rose slowly, lifting my glass. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began. This dinner isn't just about memory. It's about gratitude for the years we've shared, the lessons we've learned, and the strength love gives us to endure. Lisa smiled, her eyes soft, almost convincing. She thought she had won, but truth has a way of arriving quiet, patient, inevitable. I set my glass down. Before dessert, I said I'd like to show you something. A little tribute. I nodded toward Mr. Harrison, the lawyer sitting quietly near the corner. He rose, pressed a button on the remote, and the lights dimmed. The screen at the end of the dining room flickered to life. At first, soft music played a familiar tune from my wedding day. Guests leaned back smiling. Lisa reached for Daniel's hand, but then the image shifted. It wasn't a slideshow of our family. It was a video, grainy but clear enough to see what mattered. Lisa, in a red coat, standing outside a hotel, her hand intertwined with another man's, her laughter ringing sharp and sweet. The camera followed as they stepped through the doors together, the timestamp marking every deceitful second. Whispers rippled through the room. Forks clinked against plates. Daniel's hand froze midair. Lisa's smile vanished. Then came the sound. Her voice, her unmistakable voice, through a hidden recording. "Don't worry, baby. The old woman believes everything. She's easy to fool. Stupid, really. Just a lonely, useless widow." The room fell silent. The word stupid hung in the air like poison. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the projector, the faint trembling of my own breath. Lisa's face turned pale. This isn't real," she stammered. "Someone's framing me." But before she could finish, Mr. Harrison stepped forward, a leather folder in hand. His voice was steady, professional, merciless. "The footage is authenticated, Mrs. Carter." And he opened the folder, placing document after document on the table, our financial records, hotel receipts, bank withdrawals, and signed witness statements confirming the affair and misuse of funds. He slid the final page across to Daniel. "You'll also find the transfer of all marital assets into your name, effective immediately." Daniel stared down, eyes wide, lips parted. His hand trembled as he flipped through the papers. The truth was undeniable, sealed, signed, and witnessed. Lisa's eyes darted around the room, searching for sympathy, for an escape. But every gaze she met was cold, distant, disappointed. Her mask had finally shattered. "Daniel," she cried, reaching for him. "Please, you have to believe me. She's turning you against me. She's lying." He stepped back, his voice hollow. "Stop. Daniel, stop." His voice broke louder now. "I've defended you, Lisa, against my own mother. I believed every word you said. And you made me think she was cruel." Tears spilled down his cheeks. "What have you done?" Lisa fell to her knees, sobbing, words tumbling out, excuses, denials, desperate pleas. But none of them mattered anymore. Truth had arrived, and with it silence. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I only looked at her steady and calm, the way a mother looks at a child who has learned a painful lesson too late. "You could have had everything," I said softly. "Love, family, a home. All you had to do was be honest. But you chose lies. You chose greed. And now you've chosen your own ruin." She cried harder, clutching at Daniel's sleeve, but he turned away, shoulders shaking. The guests sat frozen, unsure whether to comfort or condemn. I turned to Mr. Harrison. "Please make sure she leaves with what belongs to her. Nothing more, nothing less." He nodded. "Of course, Mrs. Carter." I reached for my glass again, lifting it gently. My hand no longer trembled. "To truth," I said quietly. "It may come slowly, but it always arrives." No one dared to toast, but they watched, some in awe, some in sorrow, all in silence. Lisa rose slowly, wiping her face, eyes red and hollow. She looked at me one last time, not with anger, but disbelief, as if she'd never thought the woman she called old and weak could ever fight back. But strength isn't always loud. Silencio. Sometimes it sits patiently in the dark, waiting for dawn. As she stumbled out the door, Daniel sank into the chair beside me, his face buried in his hands. "Mom," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." I placed a trembling hand on his back. "No, my son. Don't be sorry. Just see." He nodded slowly. eyes glistening. And in that moment, I knew the truth had done what my words never could. The guests began to rise, offering quiet goodbyes, hushed blessings, awkward glances. The candles burned low. The house felt empty, but peaceful. When the last door closed, I stood alone in the room among the photos. The memories, the ashes of love, turned to lessons. I exhaled deeply, letting the silence settle. My husband's portrait hung above the fireplace. I looked up at him whispering, "It's done." And somewhere in the quiet, I could almost hear his voice, warm, proud, steady. Truth needs no armor, only light. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped losing. A few weeks later, the courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and cold truth. I sat quietly in the second row, hands folded in my lap as the judge entered, and everyone rose. The air was thick with silence, the kind that follows a storm when debris still lingers, but the sky has already cleared. Lisa stood at the front, her head bowed, her once perfect hair unkempt. The elegance she wore like armor was gone, replaced by exhaustion and fear. No designer dress, no confident smile. Just a woman stripped of illusion, waiting for the gavel to fall. Daniel sat beside me, his eyes fixed forward. His jaw was tight, his hands trembling ever so slightly. It wasn't anger I saw in him anymore, but acceptance. A quiet grief for the life he thought he had. The judge's voice echoed across the room, steady and final. After reviewing the evidence, the financial records, the testimonies, and the recorded confessions, the court hereby rules in favor of the plaintiff, Daniel Carter. A murmur rippled through the room, faint but clear. The judge continued his tone, sharp, decisive. Mrs. Lisa Carter is hereby stripped of all claims to marital property and joint assets. All bank accounts will be frozen and reallocated. The primary residence business, shares, and investment holdings will be transferred solely to Mr. Daniel Carter. Lisa's shoulders stiffened. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no sound came. Her lawyer leaned close, whispering something futile, a consolation that couldn't rewrite the truth. And furthermore, the judge said, glancing down at the papers before him, Mrs. Carter is ordered to repay the misappropriated funds in full. Continued spousal support is hereby terminated, effective immediately. The words hung in the air like the toll of a bell, clear, resounding, irrevocable. For a moment, no one moved. Then the gavel struck wood. Bang! Court is adjourned. Lisa stood frozen. Her eyes darted toward Daniel, pleading desperate. But the man she once fooled wouldn't meet her gaze. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply stood gathering his papers, his dignity, and the quiet strength she had underestimated. She turned to me then. For the first time in months, our eyes met hers, hollow mind calm. Once I might have felt pity, but pity has no place where justice finally breathes. She walked out of this courtroom with nothing but a worn handbag clutched to her chest. No jewelry, no car keys, no whispers of status, just silence and consequence. Each step she took echoed softly down the marble corridor, a reminder that every choice demands its price. Outside, the wind was crisp, the sky pale blue, honest, unclouded. Reporters stood near the steps, murmuring among themselves, but none approached. This wasn't a scandal to sensationalize. It was a story too ordinary, too human greed, betrayal, justice. Lisa paused near the curb, glancing around, as though searching for a familiar face, someone to rescue her from herself. But there was no one, only strangers passing by unaware that the woman before them had once believed she could outsmart both love and law. As Daniel spoke quietly with his attorney, I stepped forward, my cane tapping softly against the pavement. Lisa turned at the sound, startled. For a heartbeat, we stood face to face, two women bound by one man's love and by the wreckage of what she had done. I looked at her not with hatred, but with clarity. You could fool hearts, I said softly, but you can't fool justice. The law sees what love refused to. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw something genuine. Not sorrow for the pain she caused, but regret for the empire she lost. She turned away, clutching her torn bag, and disappeared into the crowd. I stood there for a moment, the city's hum wrapping around me like a hymn. Justice isn't loud. It doesn't shout or boast. It simply is. And when it arrives, it doesn't need witnesses, only truth. Daniel walked over, his expression somber. "Mom," he whispered, "I never wanted it to end this way." I placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Endings aren't meant to be easy, my son. They're meant to be honest." He nodded slowly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. Together we descended the courthouse steps, leaving behind the echoes of deception and the scent of old wood and finality. For the first time, the air felt light. Not sweet truth rarely is, but clean. Justice had spoken, and it had done so with grace. As we reached the car, I glanced once more at the courthouse doors. Somewhere inside, clerks filed papers stamped, signatures, sealed outcomes. And just like that, years of lies were turned into records of truth. Life, I thought, has its own balance sheet. Every debt of deceit eventually comes due. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift replaced by something gentler, relief. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. "Come, Daniel," I said softly. "Let's go home." And as we drove away, the courthouse fading in the rearview mirror, I whispered to myself, in the end, justice always finds its way. And karma, she never forgets an address. The days after the trial passed quietly. No more whispers, no more lies. The house, once echoing with doubt and sorrow, now felt still peaceful, like it was finally exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, soft and golden, brushing over the old photographs that lined the mantel. My husband's portrait. Daniel's childhood smile, the faded memories of a family that had weathered every storm and still stood tall. I was sitting by the window when I heard the door open. The familiar sound of footsteps filled the hallway heavier, now slower, burdened not by anger, but by remorse. Daniel stepped into the room, his shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. In his hands, he carried a bouquet of daisies, my favorite, simple and honest. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other, a mother and her son, both changed, both scarred, both still learning how to forgive. He finally broke the silence, his voice trembling. "Mom." He paused, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner. For doubting you, for believing her instead of you." I rose slowly from my chair, my hand resting against the table for balance. The pain in my arm had healed, but the ache in my heart had lingered longer. Yet now looking at him, the boy I had raised, the man I had fought for that ache, began to ease. I stepped closer, cupping his face in my hand, the way I used to when he was small. "My son," I whispered, "love isn't wrong. What's wrong is loving the wrong person." His eyes glistened, tears welling up as he leaned into my touch. "I thought I was protecting her," he said softly. "But you were the one protecting me." I smiled faintly, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "That's what mothers do. Even when our children don't see the storm, we stand in the rain for them." He pulled me into an embrace, warm, desperate, full of unspoken gratitude. For a long moment, I just held him, feeling his heartbeat against mine, steady and strong. The same heartbeat I once cradled in my arms, now returned to me after so much loss. "Mom," he murmured, "how did you stay so calm through it all?" I closed my eyes, my voice quiet but firm. Because I knew the truth, and truth doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs time. We stood there, mother and son, in the gentle light of morning. Outside, the world went on. Birds sang, leaves rustled, life moved forward. Inside, something sacred was being rebuilt, not just trust, but understanding. When we finally pulled apart, I looked around the room at the wedding ring I still wore at the empty chair where my husband once sat. "Your father would be proud," I said softly. "Not because we won, but because we didn't lose ourselves trying to." Daniel nodded, his jaw tightening, as he looked toward the future, a future built on truth, not illusion. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low beyond the horizon, I sat once more by the window, a cup of tea cradled in my hands. The world outside was bathed in gold and rose the colors of endings and beginnings. And I realized something justice isn't a shout or a sword. Sometimes it's just a steady heart refusing to give up. I thought of Lisa, of the path she chose, the lies she told, the pain she left behind. And though I would never excuse what she did, I whispered a quiet prayer for her. Not for her return, but for her reckoning, the kind that happens not in courts, but in hearts. As the last light faded, I spoke softly to the silence, my voice steady, filled with the strength of everything I had endured. Sometimes, justice doesn't need a cry for vengeance. It only needs a heart that refuses to break. And then, almost as if speaking to every woman who had ever been doubted, betrayed, or silenced, I added, never underestimate a woman who once loved with her whole heart. Because when her love is betrayed, she won't seek revenge, she'll seek truth. And truth always wins in the end. The wind rustled the curtains gently, carrying the scent of daisies and tea through the room. I smiled, closing my eyes. The storm had passed. The house was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, my heart was at peace.